Well, you probably know by the title, but I ended up selling my Outback and upgraded to the Pro Angler 14 360. If you're actually thinking about upgrading to a 360, which I didn't need to by any means, but there are several reasons why I wanted to, and I'm just going to go over some of them. I'm also trying to hunt down some fish, so this is either going to be a fishing video or a video of why I went with the 360. Alright, what first drew me in was, if you've watched my past videos, you know that I always refer back to the early days with the feel free lure, how that seat could go up really high, and I like being up really high because majority of the fishing I do is in like 3 foot of water or less, so it's just helpful to be up high and being able to see. So anyway, going back on that, the feel free seat was definitely the most comfortable seat that I've been in. Now the Outback seat was very, very comfortable, but it just didn't have that. It just didn't have the height like the feel free did. So after I got in a Pro Angler, and it was just the seat, I didn't think I could get more comfortable than the Outback seat, or the feel free for that matter, until I got in this. But just being up high is one of the key things that made me want to upgrade, and plus I got a really, really good price on my Outback, so that really kind of pushed me a little bit to do it. All right, another thing that drew me in was just the space. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it comes with the slight disadvantage of weight, but I launch off my seawall right now by hand, and it's not that bad. I thought it was going to be worse, we'll put it that way. I mean, it's definitely noticeable, but it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I don't carry a lot of stuff. I mean, just the freaking space is ridiculous. Like, I can actually put I usually carry no more than 4 rods, but I can put 6 in here if I wanted to and still have room to step into my kayak, which with the Outback I kind of already put them in the rod holders and then stepped into my Outback. But then, you know, you run the risk of catching a rod tip getting in and all that, because you just have, you know, rod tips sticking out everywhere. But yeah, I mean, the space is ridiculous. I can lay the measuring board completely across the inside. So I'm kind of doing this in segments because I'm kind of looking around, and this ain't gonna be one smooth run through, because I do want to find some fish while I'm doing this. But all right, we're gonna go on with stability, because however the Outback was stable, yeah, it was definitely stable, and there weren't really any instances where I felt uncomfortable. But as far as, like, you know, maybe running into an oyster or something, or just focusing on one thing and being leaned too far over, I mean, I could throw a cast net from it. It wasn't the most graceful and comfortable way to throw a cast net, but I mean, it was definitely stable enough for me to do that. I don't think I really had any close calls in the Outback either, even in some, you know, somewhat chop and everything like that. But this thing, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's going to be more stable. It's 38 inches wide compared to 35. So, but another thing was that Outback was kind of hard to stand up in, and if you had to do it quickly, sometimes that was an issue. But, like, I mean, you could grab onto like the H-rail on the Outback or the pedal and do it. But with the Pro Angler, I mean, it's literally like sitting up from like your kitchen table, and plus you're up a little bit higher while you're standing up than what the Outback was too. But I'm still just cruising along looking for fish while just going over some key features that I really like about this kayak. So yeah, I'm gonna start looking around, and then I'll probably get into the drive. I'm not going to explain everything, but just I want like real on water situations on why that I found myself in with the Outback, of why I think the Pro Angler, the 360 anyway, definitely leaps and bounds outshines that. So I'll get to some real shallow stuff where I kind of have to flutter kick and do a little demonstration of that. Okay, one thing that happened to me often in the Outback was getting up in a tight creek like this, for instance. Well, it's not really a creek, but you know, like a ditch or something, and needing to reverse, but you can't because you can't get your fin straight up and down to flip the cord. Well, with this, I think it may be too shallow right now, but I'll at least get to the point where I'm hitting bottom. So with this, all I have to do, first I gotta get shallow enough. Maybe it's not too shallow. All right, we'll just, okay, there we go. Now I'm dragging a little bit. So, you know, I'm fluttering in a shallow area, right? And then I get to the point where I need to either turn around or go in reverse. Like there's some pretty good oysters right here. So what I couldn't do was go in reverse. With this, I just spin the drive backwards and I can flutter my way right back out. I do have current and wind at my back right now, so I'm not really speeding up out of here, but so yeah, so now I can pretty much have instant reverse. It's still not hands-free like a pedal or a prop drive is, but I didn't have any issues going in reverse with the Outback anyway, as far as how long it took. The only issue I had was when I'm, you know, in a place where I had to flutter kick and I couldn't get the fins vertical enough to flip it into reverse. So that was annoying, and that happened often. So this right here kind of really takes care of that. Another thing you don't think about, even though this is a much larger kayak, I can get this into tighter places and maneuver once I'm in them tighter places better because of the 360. So if I'm like, there's been several times with the Outback to where, and this goes with any kayak I guess, and it's not just the Outback, I'd get to a real narrow ditch to where maybe the ditch is 13 feet wide. My Outback is 12 foot 9 inches wide. Turning around was a pain, especially if you were in shallow, because then you would have to either get your paddle out, your push pull out, which isn't really a big deal, but when you have to do it as often as I did, it is kind of an inconvenience. So far I've had this out a couple times, and I've just, you know, gotten as shallow as I could, and just to test it before I kind of to validate my reasonings to see if what I wanted it to do before actually using it, it could do. So yeah, definitely any kind of tight situations or needing to go in reverse where your drive is too shallow to be straight up and down, like it pretty much eliminates all those issues that the Outback had. All right, so where I live now and where I fish now, just because I live here, we have a few bridges and stuff like that that I really didn't have easy access to, I guess, at my old place. So I never really thought about just strictly structure fishing around bridges. I did try it once in the Outback. It's okay, but I feel like with having, you know, a lot less control, you get off point much easier. Like with the 360 drive, you can, you know, if you go left too far, right too far on your structure, it doesn't matter because you can just, you know, spin the drive. And then if I want to go right a little bit, oh, I passed it. Just guess what? Just go left just a little bit, get right back on it. And then you can also have the arrow pointing back a little bit. So you're not going forward when you're going left or right, but you're staying right there. Would probably be a good spot where if the current's pushing you forward, where you can, and then you would just flip it to the other side, and just you can stay on that structure without having to like come back 10-15 feet realign and reapproach the structure, which I noticed that I had to do that quite a bit depending on the current and or wind. Oh, but yeah, so that's another reason. And like, if I want to go down a bank, which I usually just, you know, cast along the bank and not really at the bank, but I mean, there is some situations where I like to just cast right up against the bank and bring it straight back to me. So if I want to stay pointing at this bank, the wind's going to kill me here. This is probably a horrible place to demonstrate it, but just being able to control every aspect of where my nose is pointing, how the current's taking me. Like, if I'm drifting down this bank and I want to keep my nose straight, you can't always do that without having any control of your nose. So yeah, even if you wanted to actually pedal sideways down the bank, I haven't mastered it or anything, but I got it to do it a couple times, but something like this. And then you can just keep the kayak just going sideways down the bank, which is pretty cool. I don't think I would use it that much. I'd much rather drift, but hey, the option's there. So, so those are all the key features that I love about this and what kind of made me pull the trigger. Things that I miss from the Outback are the weight. Not a huge deal, but anytime you make something lighter, no matter what it is, it's always better if you're physically moving it. Speed is not that big of an issue. Like, I honestly thought it was going to be. So, like, you know, I've been up and down through these areas 100 times, so I kind of relatively know, especially with the fish finder, what my average speed usually is, you know, because sometimes I do have to beat the tide in order to get to my seawall on time to not have to lift it up, you know, 6 feet from the water. So I think on average, from what I've just noticed and kind of kept an eye on, it's only like, I don't know, probably around 0.2 to 0.5, so maybe a half mile an hour less speed, I guess. But what I do find with that is, over a long period of time, I kind of think I would rather, that was a good turn, that was just with the rudder. I think I would rather just be more comfortable for that extra 10 or 15 minutes it takes me to get somewhere, because like I said, I wasn't uncomfortable by any means in the Outback, but just the comfort level of this seat coming from that is definitely noticeable. Like, some would say, like, oh, the Outback seat's uncomfortable now. I mean, if you were in this for a long period of time, you would probably think that, but at the time I didn't have like any issues with it comfort wise. So yeah, speed's not, like I said, it's not that big of a deal. I won't say you lose a whole lot. Another thing that I miss from the Outback is the amount of gear track. Like, the only gear track you have is up there. I wish that these A-trails right here had the gear track in it like the Outback did, because now I have to kind of buy A-trail stuff. And there ain't no paddle keep, which I'll get to that. There is, but it's not like on the side like this, so I had to get these little G-hold things for paddle keep. What I will tell you is the A-trail accessories are way more solid, like less wiggle and all that, so that's definitely a plus. But I kind of miss just having my gear tracks at the same time. I do have gear tracks on the boondocks in the back though, so that's where most of my rod holder is. I have one staged right there for if I want to troll, and then I have these little roto grip paddle things for when I'm standing up, and if I want to cast, I can just put my paddle on it. I don't really even have to really push the paddle inside of it, but you can, and it's relatively quiet when you do. So yeah, I mean, I already kind of covered on the what I don't like the paddle keep, I guess, which is back here. You can see how the two paddles are, how they're clipped in. I wish they did make a bungee just to have it ready to go, and you can also, you know, store them there if you know you're not going to use the paddle. But if I want to stand up and paddle, then I have to take those off of that, assemble them, and then paddle, and then I can just use that, which I like using the roto grip things better as far as putting the paddle away quickly. Like, I don't want to see a fish and have to bend down and put it and worry about putting it in a bungee. I did test it. The paddle will go on top of my stakeout pole because you have, I don't know if you can see that, you have a good bit of, I don't know, all the way, yeah. So I would demonstrate it, but I don't really feel like unpacking that thing. But anyways, that's kind of the rundown of why I got the new kayak and kind of what it does for me. So if this helps you, good. If it doesn't, I'm sorry if you sat through all of it, but I appreciate you guys watching regardless, and hopefully I'll see you next time with a fishing video out of it.